I have observed this in my experience of slavery, that whenever my condition was improved, instead of its increasing my contentment, it only increased my desire to be free, and set me to thinking of plans to gain my freedom. I have found that, to make a contented slave, it is necessary to make a thoughtless one. It is necessary to darken his moral and mental vision, and as far as possible to annihilate the power of reason. He must be able to detect no inconsistencies in slavery. He must be made to feel that slavery is right, and he can be brought to that only when he ceases to be a man. Our fate for life was now to be decided. We had no more voice in that decision than the brutes among us whom we were ranked. A single word from the white men was enough, against all our wishes, prayers, and entreaties, to sunder forever the dearest friends, dearest kindred, and strongest ties known to human beings. The overseer, Mr. Severe's place, was filled by a Mr. Hopkins. He was a very different man. He was less cruel, less profane, and made less noise than Mr. Severe. His course was characterized by no extraordinary demonstrations of cruelty. He whipped, but seemed to take no pleasure in it. He was called by the slaves a good overseer. And believe me, it is a job too. I have to weigh over every bit of cotton going in and out and to see to the loading and unloading of it. Why, just today we handled close to 500 bales. That's something, let me tell you. And the worst part of it is bossing the niggers that handle it. You have to talk to 'em like you're going to kill them, or they'll lay down on you and not do a lick of work. I've got so I can talk just as mean and hateful as anything. Oh, I don't mean it, but I have to get the work out of 'em. The motto which I adopted when I started from slavery was this: trust no man. I saw in every white man an enemy, and in almost every colored man cause for distrust. In 1676, rich planters learned from a rebellion that poor whites had to be forever separated from enslaved blacks. They divided and conquered by creating more white privileges. All whites now wielded absolute power to abuse any African person. Poor whites had risen into their lowly place in slave society, the armed defenders of planters, a place that would sow bitter animosity between them and enslaved Africans. The biggest problem I see here is the landlord that has a bunch of tenant farmers on his place. They work like niggers all the year and he gets rich. They can't even make enough to eat on through the winter. I've had some pretty good landlords and some pretty bad ones, but I reckon that I'll have to put up with them all my life. Speaking about money, well, I reckon we live on about $4 or $5 a week now, but it ain't exactly what you call living. I get a day's work here and yonder digging ditches or wells, chopping wood or killing hogs. Some of them pay me off in meat or potatoes. Some weeks we don't have but $1 or $2, and so we go in debt for groceries and have to pay it out of the next week's money. We've never had more than about $12 a week to live on, except in wartime. The farms can't keep up the big families like they used to. Not near so many folks can live on the farms and work the land and make a living as a generation ago. The young folks have got nothing to look for ahead on a farm now as I did when I was a young man. Plenty of land then. We thought the price of $5 an acre was high, but we didn't appreciate what we was getting according to prices now. Hate and ignorance have not driven the history of racist ideas in America. Racist policies have driven the history of racist ideas in America. Time and again, racist ideas have not been cooked up from the boiling pot of hate and ignorance. Time and again, powerful and brilliant men and women have produced racist ideas in order to justify the racist policies of their era, in order to redirect the blame for their era's racial disparities away from those policies and onto black people. Assimilationist ideas of Christianizing and civilizing enslaved Africans were particularly dangerous because they gave convincing power to the idea that slavery was just and should not be resisted. I indulged a faint hope that Captain Odd's conversion to Methodism would lead him to emancipate his slaves, and that, if he did not do this, it would at any rate make him more kind and humane. I was disappointed in both these respects. It neither made him to be humane to his slaves, nor to emancipate them. If it had any effect on his character, it made him more cruel and hateful in all his ways. For I believe him to have been a much worse man after his conversion than before. Prior to his conversion, he relied upon his own depravity to shield and sustain him in his savage barbarity, but after his conversion, he found religious sanction and support for his slave-holding cruelty. The whisper that my master was my father may or may not be true, and, true or false, it is of but little consequence to my purpose whilst the fact remains, in all its glaring odiousness, that slaveholders have ordained, and by law established, that the children of slave women shall in all cases follow the condition of their mothers, and this is done too obviously to administer to their own lusts, and make a gratification of their wicked desires profitable as well as pleasurable, for by this cunning arrangement the slaveholder, in cases not a few, sustains to his slaves the double relation of master and father. The beneficiaries of slavery, segregation, and mass incarceration have produced racist ideas of black people being suited for or deserving the confines of slavery, segregation, or the jail cell. Consumers of these racist ideas have been led to believe there's something wrong with black people, and not the policies that have enslaved, oppressed, and confined so many black people. From their arrival around 1619, African people had illegally resisted legal slavery. They had thus been stamped from the beginning as criminals. In all of the 50 suspected or actual slave revolts reported in newspapers during the American colonial era, resisting Africans were nearly always cast as violent criminals, not people reacting to enslavers' regular brutality or pressing for the most basic human desire: freedom. So long as there was slavery, there would be racist ideas justifying it.